You keep working harder, yet one unexpected expense can still dictate your entire month. Money passes through your hands, but control never stays there long enough to change your position. The comfortable belief is that wealth is a single destination, reached by earning more and spending less. That belief keeps you blind to the real structure. You can increase your income and remain trapped in survival. You can accumulate savings and still be ruled by fear. You can accumulate savings and still be ruled by fear. You can look successful while standing beneath the same invisible ceiling. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to the person who controls dependence. The person who needs others more than others need them is never truly secure, no matter how impressive the surface appears. Wealth follows the same law. Each stage gives you a different kind of freedom, and each stage contains a trap designed to make you mistake movement for escape. Wealth is not income. Control is. There are 5 stages. Survival, where every decision is made under pressure. Stability, where the emergency has ended but dependence remains. Leverage, where resources begin producing options. Authority, where your position influences outcomes beyond your own labor. And the final stage, where your freedom becomes difficult to threaten because your value, relationships, and reserves no longer depend on one fragile source. Most people never identify the stage holding them. They attack the symptoms instead. They chase higher pay while ignoring exposure, protect savings while refusing useful risk, or seek status before building control. The trap changes shape, but the confinement remains. If this feels uncomfortable, pay attention. Discomfort is often the first evidence that the old explanation is losing its grip. The fact that you are examining the structure already separates you from the crowd that only counts visible results. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which wealth stage has captured you, the ceiling governing it, and the single shift required to move beyond it. Stage 1. Escape the emergency. Most people in survival mistake motion for progress. They work longer hours, accept every request, and call exhaustion ambition. The strategic few understand the first law of wealth. Before money can build freedom, it must stop being constantly summoned to repair damage. Look at the ordinary scene. A bill arrives on a Tuesday. The account is already assigned to rent, food, transport, and the debt left over from last month. One small failure follows another. A tire goes flat. A child needs something for school. A shift disappears. The amount may be manageable in theory, but not in the life being lived. The problem is not merely low income. It is zero room. Now follow that person through the next 7 days. The tire is repaired by delaying another payment. The delayed payment creates a fee. The fee forces an extra shift. The extra shift creates fatigue, and fatigue produces a convenience purchase because there is no energy left to cook or compare alternatives. That purchase appears insignificant. The pattern is not. Every decision is being made by the emergency created by the decision before it. This is how dependence hides. It rarely arrives as one dramatic catastrophe. It arrives as a chain of small commands. Pay this now, borrow that today, accept the shift, do not question the employer, do not leave the arrangement, do not repair the deeper leak because the surface is demanding attention again. Most people respond by searching for a larger paycheck while preserving the same exposure. More money enters, more obligations immediately claim it. The wealthy-minded person first asks a colder question: what keeps creating emergencies? Is it unstable work, expensive dependence, unexamined subscriptions, a fragile household arrangement, or the habit of spending future income before it arrives? The question is not designed to shame anyone. It is designed to locate the lever. If the problem is unstable work, the first move may be a more reliable skill. If the problem is fixed costs, the move may be reducing commitments before increasing consumption. If the problem is disorganized timing, the move may be separating bills by purpose and date. If the problem is dependence on one person, the move may be building private capacity and clear boundaries. Machiavelli observed that a ruler who depends on one uncertain force is never secure, even when that force appears powerful. Survival operates by the same rule. One employer, one client, one account, one person rescuing the household. These are not foundations, they are single points of failure. The shift out of survival is not looking rich. It is creating a buffer between income and disaster. Reduce the number of emergencies, separate essential costs from emotional relief, build a reserve before rewarding the appearance of progress, not luxury, not applause. Room to wait before signing, room to inspect before agreeing, room to recover before borrowing, room to tell the truth about what is affordable. Without room, even good opportunities become threats because they arrive at the wrong time. The crowd pays the cost of every surprise. The strategic person pays in advance for the right not to panic. That is the difference. A person who has no margin may be intelligent, disciplined, and hardworking, yet still appear inconsistent because pressure keeps interrupting every plan. The failure is not always character. Sometimes the design leaves no space for character to operate. Fix the design, and effort begins to accumulate instead of evaporating. If this stage stings, let it. The sting is not an insult to your effort. It is evidence that the structure has been named. You are not weak because pressure controls your decisions. You are exposed because pressure has too many entrances. Do not turn that discomfort into self-contempt. Use it as a signal. When an explanation hurts because it removes an excuse, that pain can become useful. The person who can look directly at exposure has already gained the first piece of control over it. Survival ends when one bad week no longer gets to command the entire month. The first ceiling is dependence on immediate income. Break that ceiling and a new danger appears, mistaking quiet for freedom. Stage 2. Turn calm into stability. Most people reach a little breathing room and immediately spend it proving that the emergency is over. They upgrade the apartment, widen the lifestyle, accept a larger payment, and then wonder why peace vanished. The strategic few treat stability as a weapon, not a reward. They use calm to make better decisions before the next threat arrives. Consider two people who begin with similar wages and similar pressure. Over 10 years, both receive opportunities to earn more. One raises every expense as income rises, keeps no meaningful reserve, and relies on the same employer because changing direction feels dangerous. The other keeps a controlled lifestyle, builds a reserve, develops a second useful capability, and makes decisions from time rather than panic. 10 years later, the first may look richer. The second can refuse a bad offer. One owns more objects, the other owns more objects. The other owns more options. Watch how the difference forms in ordinary moments. The first person receives a raise and treats it as permission to make every month more expensive. The second receives the same raise and divides its meaning. Some supports the present, some protects the future, some purchases capability. Neither decision produces instant applause, but only one converts improved independence. Most people think stability means having enough money to maintain the present. That is too narrow. Stability means your present cannot be easily held hostage by one interruption. It is the power to wait, negotiate, recover, and say no without collapsing. The banal test appears at the kitchen table. A better job requires 3 weeks before the first payment. A relative asks for help. A necessary repair appears. The unstable person chooses from fear because every choice threatens the next bill. The stable person may still say no, but the decision belongs to them. That is wealth beginning to speak. Imagine a Friday evening when a supervisor demands an answer about a new schedule. The terms are worse, but the supervisor assumes compliance because the worker cannot afford a gap. One person agrees before reading the details. The other asks for time, checks the alternatives, and decides with a clear view of the consequences. The second may still accept. The crucial difference is that acceptance is no longer automatic. That is what reserves purchase. not an easy life. A pause between pressure and obedience. Machiavelli understood that subjects are easiest to command when their survival depends on immediate favor. The modern version is not a crown. It is the arrangement that makes you afraid to question anything because one lost paycheck would expose the whole design. The shift here is discipline without self-punishment. Fix the baseline. Keep recurring costs below the level that forces obedience. Protect reserves from being converted into status. Learn to distinguish comfort from control. Comfort feels good today. Control remains useful tomorrow. Most people collect conveniences. The strategic few collect refusal power. One is surrounded, the other is unafraid. Build the ability to remain still. Do not answer every request instantly. Do not interpret every delay as failure. Do not spend every improvement before it has had time to strengthen the foundation. Stability grows through repeated decisions that look uneventful from the outside. Pause. Name the thing that would force obedience if income stopped for 1 month. Then name the second thing. The first answer may be obvious, but the second often reveals the hidden chain. Perhaps the pressure is not one bill, but the expectation to maintain a certain image. Perhaps it is not one employer, but the absence of a transferable capability. Perhaps it is not the amount owed, but the belief that asking for time signals weakness. That answer marks your ceiling. Stability is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of enough margin to act despite it. But margin alone can become a locked room if it never learns to produce. Stage 3. Make resources create options. Most people in stability protect every resource so carefully that nothing can expand. They save, preserve, and wait for perfect certainty. The strategic few know that money locked away from every form of useful deployment has only defended the present. It has not purchased the future. This is where the control gap appears. The control gap is the distance between what you earn by direct effort and what your existing resources can help you command. A narrow gap means every result still requires your hours. A widening gap means time, systems, skills, relationships, or capital begin carrying part of the burden. This is not a command to chase speculation or gamble with necessities. It is a diagnostic. Ask what remains productive when attention moves elsewhere. A documented process, a trained replacement, a durable skill, a service that can be delivered without starting from zero each time, a reserve that prevents forced choices. The resource matters because it creates options, not because it looks impressive. Picture an ordinary evening. One person finishes work, answers messages, and begins again because nothing operates without personal supervision. Another spends the same evening improving a process, learning a scarce capability, or building a relationship that reduces future dependence. Both are tired. Only one is converting effort into a structure. Now extend the scene by 1 year. The first person has become faster at repeating the same tasks, but absence still creates a halt. The second has made mistakes, revised the process, and endured the awkwardness of being a beginner again. The second person may not appear more successful during the first few months. Yet when a new demand arrives, the structure absorbs part of it. Effort has left a residue. Most people ask, how much can this make? The strategic few ask, what will this allow me to refuse, delay, or redirect? That question protects you from the lure of shallow gain. Ask another question. If attention disappeared for 1 week, what would continue without permission? If the answer is nothing, the next resource is not necessarily more money. It may be documentation, training, a repeatable method, a stronger boundary, or a capability no single arrangement can easily remove. Machiavelli warned that borrowed strength can disappear when its source changes. The lesson applies to every resource. If your progress depends on an employer's mood, a platform's rules, a client's loyalty, or your own uninterrupted energy, the resource is not fully yours. It is rented leverage. Rented leverage can still be useful, but it must never be mistaken for independence. Use it while building something less fragile. Learn the terms. Identify the exit. Keep a record of what belongs to the arrangement and what belongs to you. The strategic person does not reject dependence in one dramatic gesture. The strategic person does not reject dependence in one dramatic gesture. The strategic person, the shift is to build assets of control without risking the foundation that keeps you alive. Develop one capability that increases bargaining power. Create one process that saves repeated effort. Establish one relationship based on mutual value rather than desperation. Keep one reserve that protects the experiment from becoming a crisis. Not every opportunity deserves pursuit. Not every risk is courage. The useful move is the one that increases future choices without destroying present security. The crowd counts what it owns. The strategic person counts what it can make possible. That distinction changes how resources are evaluated. A purchase that preserves time may be more valuable than one that signals success. A difficult conversation may produce more freedom than a temporary gain. A skill that makes you harder to replace may matter more than a title that makes you easier to observe. If resistance rises here, that is useful information. It may reveal a hidden belief that safety means never moving. Safety that forbids movement becomes another form of captivity. The discomfort of deployment is not evidence that deployment is reckless. It may be evidence that the old identity only knows how to protect, never to build. Move carefully, test honestly, preserve the foundation, and let results correct imagination. Leverage begins when effort leaves a residue behind, but options that cannot influence outcomes remain private comfort. The next stage demands that your value travel beyond your own hands. Stage 4. Convert value into authority. Most people believe authority arrives after recognition, wealth, or a title. The strategic few see it differently. Authority begins when outcomes change because your judgment, standards, or relationships are difficult to replace. This does not mean controlling people, it means becoming reliable in a way the surrounding system can feel. The person who sees risk early, the person who connects the right capabilities, the person whose word carries weight because it has survived pressure. Influence is not volume, it is consequence. Watch two workers in the same meeting. One speaks constantly, agrees quickly, and leaves with more tasks. The other listens for the actual constraint, names it clearly, and offers a decision that reduces confusion. The first receives attention. The second becomes necessary. One is visible. The other is consulted when the stakes rise. Follow them after the meeting. The first worker complains that everyone depends on them, but no one respects them. The second sends a short record of the decision, clarifies ownership, and prevents the same confusion from returning next week. The first has accumulated activity. The second has accumulated trust. Most people chase status before they have developed uncommon usefulness. They collect symbols, repeat opinions, and confuse being known with being trusted. The strategic few build a reputation around a specific form of judgment. They make promises carefully. They document results. They do not spend credibility on every argument. Authority also requires restraint. The person who comments on everything teaches others that attention is cheap. The person who chooses the moments that matter makes speech carry more weight. Silence is not weakness when it is protecting accuracy. A refusal is not hostility when it prevents a bad decision. Machiavelli understood that people judge power by what it can cause, not by what it claims to be. In practical life, authority grows when your presence reduces uncertainty for others while preserving your freedom to walk away. The shift is to stop selling hours as the whole product. Sell discernment. Sell standards. Sell the ability to make a difficult situation simpler. This can happen inside a job, across a network, or through a craft, but the principle remains: become the person who changes the quality of the decision. Ask yourself, when a problem appears, are you contacted because you are available, or because you are valuable? That distinction is a border. Then inspect the reason people trust you. Is it because you always rescue them at personal cost, or because you can improve the situation without creating a new dependency? Rescue can make you busy. Judgment makes you consequential. The crowd seeks permission to advance. The strategic few become the reason advancement is possible. One waits for a seat. The other changes the table. Do not mistake this stage for permission to manipulate fear or desire. Those triggers exist in you as well as in everyone around you. Recognize them, refuse to be played by them, and build influence through durable value. Power gained through panic requires constant maintenance. Authority built on usefulness compounds quietly. Authority is also vulnerable to vanity. Once people begin asking for your opinion, the temptation is to perform certainty. Resist it. Admit what is unknown. Separate facts from preference. Make the decision clearer, not your image larger. The person who must always appear right eventually becomes unsafe to trust. The aphorism is simple. Status announces. Authority changes decisions. You can now earn, preserve, and influence. Yet any power that depends on one identity, one income stream, or one circle remains vulnerable. The final stage is not merely having more, it is becoming difficult to reduce. Stage 5. Become untouchable through permanence. Most people stop when life looks successful. They acquire the visible signs of arrival and assume the danger has passed. The strategic few ask what would remain if the applause disappeared, the role ended, the market shifted, or the familiar circle moved on. They build a position that is not dependent on one fragile source. Untouchable does not mean invincible. It means difficult to control through ordinary threats. Your value is distributed across capabilities. Your reserves create time. Your relationships are based on trust rather than need. Your identity is not chained to one title. A setback can wound the position, but it cannot erase the person. The ordinary scene is a sudden change at work. The email is brief. The role is gone. One person experiences the event as a verdict on existence because income, status, routine, and self-respect were fused together. Another feels the loss, but not total collapse. Skills remain. Relationships remain. A reserve remains. The next move is painful, not impossible. Consider what happens in the following month. The first person spends every day trying to recreate the old position exactly because any different path feels like failure. The second takes inventory. Which capabilities travel? Which relationships are real? Which habits were built only for that role? The second person does not pretend the loss is good. The second person refuses to let the loss define the limits of the next move. That is the final contrast. Most people build a life that looks strong from one angle. The strategic few build several independent supports, then protect the mind that coordinates them. One has a tower, the other has ground. Machiavelli observed that fortune can alter circumstances without completely ruling the prepared. Preparation is not superstition and not optimism. It is the deliberate reduction of points where another force can command you. The shift is identity. Stop asking only, how do I make more? Ask what kind of person can remain useful, solvent, clear, and free when conditions change. Then organize your resources around that answer. Automate what should not depend on mood. Maintain reserves without worshipping them. Keep learning after recognition. Choose relationships that survive utility. Leave behind systems that function without constant personal sacrifice. Permanence is not a frozen life. It is a life with enough depth to survive movement. It means your principles do not change every time circumstances do. It means your skills can be transferred, your judgment can be trusted, and your name can stand for something more durable than a temporary result. This is where the control gap reaches its deepest meaning. The goal is not to escape work forever. It is to ensure that work expresses choice rather than desperation. If this feels too demanding, notice the reaction. The old self often calls permanence excessive because permanence would remove its excuses. That discomfort is not proof that the standard is wrong. It may be proof that the former identity was built around being needed by emergencies. Let the discomfort remain long enough to teach something. Growth rarely feels like the old pattern becoming comfortable. It feels like losing tolerance for the thing that once seemed unavoidable. The awkwardness of rebuilding is a growth signal when it appears beside greater clarity, stronger boundaries, and more useful capacity. The crowd wants wealth to display a rival. The strategic person wants wealth to preserve direction. An untouchable position is not measured by how loudly it enters a room. It is measured by how little the room can dictate. The question is not whether fortune will change. It will. The question is whether every change gets to rename you. Can a lost role remove your discipline? Can a smaller season erase your judgment? Can another person's approval determine your standards? If so, the work is not finished. Wealth becomes permanent when your freedom no longer depends on one fragile source. The final aphorism is this: money can change your position, but identity decides whether you can keep it. Most people will hear this map, recognize one stage, and return to the habits that made the stage comfortable. The few will use recognition as a decision. They will reduce exposure before seeking display, build options before demanding status, and protect the identity capable of carrying freedom forward. This map was only the visible edge. The structure now sits in front of you, and most people will hear it, recognize themselves, and alter nothing. Beneath this video waits virtue pure, the Machiavelli doctrine. It is not a lecture, not a motivational speech, and not another layer of commentary, but the full cold system behind the ideas just examined. 3 territories: gold, crown, and iron for money, the people around you, and the mind that rules both. Choose which territory to take first, then tap the pinned comment. The rules the powerful never say out loud are waiting there. Subscribe to Machiavelli's gold frequency as the act of refusing to remain among those who recognize the map yet obey the old pattern. The question is no longer where you stand. It is whether you become the person who breaks the ceiling or the person who keeps decorating the cage.